You ever scroll through Zillow and see a Florida home listed for $50-something thousand and think, wait, that can't be real? Because in a world where rent eats half your paycheck, owning a house for the price of a used Honda sounds unreal. But here's the twist, those prices are real. However, what's behind them isn't what the listings show. Some towns look like paradise, yet their insurance costs more than the mortgage. Others sparkle with lakes so blue you'd never guess the water's toxic. You might think you found Florida's best-kept secret. Yet the truth, hiding under those palm trees, could drain your savings faster than a hurricane tears through the coast. So, before you start Googling Florida homes under $60,000, listen closely, because today we're exposing 15 Florida towns where houses are unbelievably cheap. But every deal comes with a story you're not supposed to hear. And if you love discovering the hidden side of places everyone else ignores, hit that subscribe button and stick around, because what you're about to see will change how you look at cheap forever. Number 15, Sebring. At first glance, Sebring looks like the dream, a quiet town wrapped around shimmering lakes and palm trees that sway like they're posing for a postcard. Homes here still list for under $100,000, some even half that. But beneath that calm surface lies the reason those prices stay so low. Most houses were built decades ago, long before modern hurricane codes existed. Insurance companies know it, which is why coverage here can cost thousands more than the mortgage itself. And that's if you can even get insured. Many homeowners are forced to go uninsured or pay outrageous premiums through Florida's state-backed insurer. It's a hidden cost that turns every cheap home into a financial gamble. Still, Sebring keeps attracting retirees and investors who only see the price tag. Yet the ones who've lived here long enough know, Florida's sunshine might be free, but safety never is. Because just a few hours north, there's a town where one storm, just one, changed everything. Number 14, Mariana. Drive deep into the Florida Panhandle and you'll find Mariana, a town that looks peaceful now, but every cracked roof and leaning fence still whispers the same name, Michael. In 2018, Hurricane Michael hit as a Category 5 and ripped through Mariana like a freight train. It wasn't supposed to happen here. The town sits 70 miles inland. Yet, winds topping 160 miles per hour shredded homes, uprooted trees, and crushed an economy that never fully came back. Today, you can find homes listed for $60,000 or $70,000. Sounds like a steal until you look closer. Many of these houses are still patched together, half repaired, or missing key updates required for insurance. Some owners simply walked away, leaving half-empty neighborhoods behind. And while prices across Florida shot upward in the years that followed, Mariana stayed frozen in time. Because once a storm this strong hits that far inland, trust disappears. Buyers hesitate, lenders pull back, insurers raise rates, or just say no. That's how a dream home turns into a discount listing. And if a hurricane this far from the coast can destroy a town, imagine what happens to places sitting right on the water. Number 13, Perry. On the surface, Perry feels like classic small-town Florida. Brick storefronts, church bells, and pine trees that stretch past the horizon. But if you drive through today, you'll notice something else. Blue tarps, boarded windows, and for sale signs that haven't moved in months. When Hurricane Idalia slammed into Florida's Big Bend in 2023, Perry took a direct hit. Roofs vanished, trees crushed power lines, and floodwater turned quiet streets into rivers overnight. A year later, the damage is still visible, not just in the buildings, but in the housing market itself. Homes that once sold for $180,000 now list for under $100,000. Some for far less. And while the prices might look tempting, every buyer faces the same question. Can you actually insure it? Many can't. Flood maps were redrawn after Idalia, pushing more neighborhoods into high-risk zones. That means higher premiums, tighter lending, and fewer people willing to take the gamble. So yes, you can buy a house in Perry for less than the cost of a Tesla, but you might spend the same amount just trying to protect it. And if one storm could change a whole town, wait until you see what happens when an entire lake turns against the people living beside it. Number 12, Moore Haven. At first glance, Moore Haven looks like the peaceful Florida everyone dreams about. Quiet canals, fishing boats drifting across still water, sunsets that paint Lake Okeechobee gold. But the same lake that makes this town look like paradise is also the reason homes here are so cheap. When heavy rains hit, the water rises fast. And when it rises too far, Moore Haven floods, sometimes even without a hurricane. Insurance companies know it, and most have already packed up and left. Those that stayed? They charge more each year just to cover the risk. You can find houses here for $60,000 or $70,000, but there's always a catch. Annual flood insurance alone can eat up 10% of the home's total value. That's why so many for sale signs fade in the sun before a single offer appears. Yet the irony is brutal. The town sits on some of the prettiest water in the state, but locals warn visitors not to swim when the algae blooms turn the surface neon green. The view is priceless. The maintenance, not so much. So yes, Moore Haven is peaceful. But peace here comes with sandbags, insurance bills, and bottled water. And just a few miles away, another lake town faces a different kind of disaster. Not from flooding, but from the collapse of the industry that once made it rich. Number 11, Clewiston. Clewiston calls itself America's sweetest town, and for decades it lived up to the name. The sugarcane fields outside the city stretched for miles, feeding both families and fortunes. But the sweetness didn't last forever. As lawsuits, pollution concerns, and price drops hit the sugar industry, the jobs disappeared, and so did the buyers. Factories slowed, families moved, and the houses left behind started listing for shocking prices. $70,000, $60,000, sometimes even less. Investors saw opportunity. Locals saw warning signs. Because when a town depends on one industry, it only takes one bad harvest to break the economy. And it's not just the jobs. Clewiston sits near the same Lake Okeechobee that's been plagued with toxic algae blooms for years. When the wind shifts, the air smells like chemicals instead of sugar. Tourists don't stay, and retirees look elsewhere. Still, drive through on a calm evening, and it feels peaceful. Almost too peaceful. Empty streets, quiet fields, and houses waiting for someone willing to take the risk. Clewiston used to grow sugar. Now it grows uncertainty. And just across the lake, another town shares that same view. But its fall from grace hits even harder. Number 10, Pahokee. Across the lake from Clewiston lies Pahokee, once a proud, tight-knit community where Friday night football was everything. They called it the Muck. Rich, dark soil that built dreams and sent local kids all the way to the NFL. But that same soil couldn't protect the town from what came next. When the sugar industry downsized, jobs vanished overnight. And when algae blooms poisoned Lake Okeechobee, the air turned foul, the fish died, and tourists stopped coming. Now, the stadium lights still stand. But the stands are half empty. Homes that once sold for $200,000 list for under $80,000 and still sit unsold. Insurance? Nearly impossible. Flood zones? Everywhere. You can buy a 4-bedroom house here for the cost of a new SUV. But living in Pahokee comes with hidden fees. The listings don't show, like isolation, flooding, and an economy that never recovered. Some investors are quietly buying entire blocks, betting on a rebound. But locals have heard that promise before. Once, Pahokee was known for producing champions. Now it's a warning. Even the strongest roots can't survive when the ground itself turns toxic. And if you think that's grim, wait until you see the next town, where poverty and pollution sit side by side, just 40 miles from Florida's wealthiest zip code. Number 9, Belle Glade. Just 40 miles from Palm Beach, one of the richest places in America, lies Belle Glade, where the contrast couldn't be sharper. Here, the streets are quiet, the jobs are scarce, and the dream that once fueled this town is fading fast. For decades, Belle Glade thrived on agriculture. Sugarcane fields stretched endlessly, and work was steady. But when automation replaced farmhands and the economy shifted, that steady work disappeared overnight. Today, nearly 40% of the population lives below the poverty line. Houses list for under $85,000, some half that. But even at those prices, few people are buying. Banks hesitate to lend, and insurance companies either charge sky-high premiums or simply walk away. Step outside at night, and you can still see the glow from burning cane fields. Smoke that drifts across the lake and settles over the town. It's a haunting reminder of what built Belglade and what slowly broke it. Yet despite the struggles, locals stay. Not because it's easy, but because it's home. They've weathered more than just storms. They've survived being forgotten. Still, just north of here, another Florida town faces a very different kind of silence. Not poverty, not pollution, just time, slowly erasing what's left of its glory. Number 8. Palatka. Palatka sits along the wide, slow-moving St. Johns River, once called the Gem City of the South. Factories buzzed, riverboats docked daily, and the downtown glowed at night. But that was a long time ago. Today, the river's still there, but the noise is gone. Half the storefronts downtown are empty. The paper mill that once employed thousands now runs on a skeleton crew. And when the jobs disappeared, so did the people. Homes that sold for over $200,000 in the early 2000s now struggle to hit $90,000. Investors browse listings online, tempted by the prices. But most never visit. They see cheap property. Locals see fading hope. Palatka isn't a town that collapsed overnight. It's one that slowly ran out of reasons to stay. You can feel it in the air, a quiet nostalgia mixed with frustration. Still, there's beauty here. Tree-lined streets, the old riverfront, and sunsets that don't care about the economy. But beauty doesn't pay the bills. And when opportunity leaves, even paradise gets discounted. Because a few hours west, there's another small town that never got the growth it was promised. And the reason might surprise you. Number 7. McClenny. Just 30 miles west of Jacksonville sits McClenny, a town that was supposed to explode with growth. New neighborhoods were planned, investors circled, and locals hoped it would become the next big suburb. But that boom never came. Jacksonville grew in every direction except west. And McClenny got left behind. Today, its largest employers aren't tech startups or logistics hubs. They're correctional facilities and hospitals. When a town's economy depends on prisons instead of progress, property values follow a different kind of logic. You can still find homes here for under $80,000, some barely above $60,000. But here's the catch. Banks rarely lend for them. Entire zip codes get redlined, forcing buyers to pay in cash, if they're brave enough to invest at all. For locals, that means being trapped. You can't refinance. You can't sell. You just wait, hoping someone sees potential in a place that time forgot. McClenny isn't falling apart. It's just standing still, too close to the city to feel rural, too far to benefit from growth. And while McClenny's problem is economic, the next town's issue runs far deeper, all the way into the ground itself. Number 6. Fort Meade. Fort Meade once called itself the phosphate capital of the world. Mining built everything here. The roads, the schools, the diners packed with workers in dusty boots. But when production slowed and environmental lawsuits hit, the town's fortune flipped overnight. The same industry that made Fort Meade rich also left it scarred. Mountains of mining waste still sit on the edges of town, and locals whisper about what's buried underneath. Groundwater tests, strange sinkholes, and the fear of contamination. They've all become part of daily life. You can buy a home here for around $80,000, sometimes even less. But that low price comes with questions most buyers don't want to ask. Is the water safe? What's under the soil? Businesses have closed. Schools have merged. The town's once busy Main Street now feels more like a museum than a marketplace. Fort Meade's story is simple. It's what happens when prosperity runs dry. Cheap land, fewer jobs, lingering doubt. And the cost of that doubt can't be measured in dollars. Because just north of here lies another town whose problem isn't buried underground. It's written right into its name. Number 5, frostproof. They named it frostproof for a reason. Because frost was never supposed to touch it. For decades, this small Polk County town thrived on citrus groves that stretched as far as you could see. But then came the freeze. In 1989, a brutal cold snap destroyed entire crops and crushed the industry that kept the town alive. The groves never fully recovered, and neither did frostproof. Today, it's quiet, peaceful even. But behind that calm lies a slow decline. With fewer jobs and little new construction, homes here sell for $80,000, sometimes far less. You can still find charm, old diners, lakeside sunsets, friendly neighbors. But opportunity? That's harder to spot. Young people move away. Retirees stay until they can't. Frostproof is proof that even paradise can freeze, not from temperature, but from time. And as you head north, the next town shows what happens when nature doesn't freeze. It floods. Number 4, Live Oak. Live Oak looks like classic small-town Florida. Moss-draped trees, quiet porches, and streets that barely see traffic. But the calm doesn't last long here. Every few years, this town gets hit. If it's not hurricane winds, it's rain. Endless rain that floods roads, basements, and backyards. Storms like Debbie and Helene didn't just knock out power. They knocked the confidence right out of the housing market. Flood maps changed, premiums spiked, and suddenly half the town found itself in a high-risk zone. That label alone can cut a home's value in half. You might buy for $90,000, but pay thousands each year just for flood insurance, if you can even get it. Still, Live Oak keeps standing. Locals rebuild, patch roofs, dry out, and try again. But buyers from outside the area, they scroll past the listings, chasing safer bets. That's why houses here sit empty, not because no one wants them, but because everyone's afraid they'll be the next to float away. Yet, just a few counties south, there's another Florida town that's not fighting the weather. It's fighting its own reflection in the water. Number 3, Okeechobee City. Okeechobee sits right on the edge of the massive lake that shares its name. A body of water so big, locals call it Florida's Inland Sea. From a distance, it looks peaceful. Fishing boats drifting, herons gliding low across the surface, sunsets reflecting like fire on the water. But that beauty hides one of Florida's most unpredictable neighbors. When the lake rises, Okeechobee floods. When it drops, toxic algae blooms turn the water into a glowing green warning sign. And every time that happens, property values sink a little lower. You can buy a home here for under $90,000. Sometimes closer to $60,000. Sounds like a dream, until you add the cost of flood insurance and maintenance. Then it's not cheap anymore. It's a balancing act. Locals say they've learned to live with the risk. They watch the water levels like clockwork and hope the levees hold. But newcomers rarely last long. One bad storm, one bad bloom, and affordable living turns into, why did I move here? Still, there's a stubborn kind of pride in Okeechobee. People here don't scare easy. They've lived through hurricanes, fish kills, and insurance nightmares, and somehow, they're still here. But drive west, and you'll find a town where the water isn't the only thing that's unstable. The entire economy sits on a knife's edge. Number 2, Arcadia. Arcadia sits right in the heart of DeSoto County. Quiet streets, old ranch houses, and a downtown that feels frozen in the 1950s. It's the kind of town where everyone still waves at passing cars, but many of those cars have for sale signs in the window. Hurricanes Charlie, Ian, and Helene all left their mark here. Each time, the Peace River spilled its banks, flooding entire neighborhoods. And each time, recovery got a little slower, and the prices dropped a little lower. You can still find charming old homes here for $70,000, sometimes even less. But here's the twist. Most of them sit in flood zones. That means expensive insurance, or no insurance at all. Add to that an economy built on agriculture and small retail, industries that barely keep up with rising costs. And you start to see why Arcadia's affordable housing comes with so many strings attached. Still, there's something stubbornly beautiful about the place. Murals downtown celebrate resilience, and locals refuse to leave no matter how many storms roll through. But just a few hours northwest, there's a different story. A town where cheap homes aren't the result of storms or floods, but because time simply stopped. Number 1, Chattahoochee. Tucked away in Florida's panhandle, right where the Apalachicola River bends, lies Chattahoochee. A town most people only pass on their way to somewhere else. It's quiet here, peaceful. Too peaceful, some might say. Decades ago, Chattahoochee thrived. The state hospital, one of Florida's oldest, employed nearly everyone in town. Shops were busy, schools were full, and paychecks kept the community alive. But when funding cuts hit and jobs disappeared, so did the people. The hospital stayed, but the economy around it crumbled. Now, the local diner closes early. Main Street goes dark by 8, and for sale signs blend into the landscape. You can buy a home here for $50,000, sometimes even less. But cheap doesn't always mean opportunity. It can mean isolation. It can mean a place forgotten by the world, where progress stopped showing up years ago. Still, there's something hauntingly beautiful about Chattahoochee. It's the kind of place that holds on, even when everything else lets go. The trees still bloom, the river still runs, and the locals still wave at strangers. This is what happens when time stands still in Florida. The sunshine fades slower, the prices drop lower, and the dream turns quiet. But if these 15 towns teach us anything, it's that cheap always comes with a cost. Florida has always sold a dream: sunshine, beaches, and the promise of an easier life. But these 15 towns reveal the side no one advertises. Here, cheap often means forgotten. It means rebuilding after hurricanes, breathing air tinted with algae, or paying insurance that costs more than the house itself. Still, for some, that risk is worth it. Because beneath the struggle, there's community, history, and a slower kind of living money can't buy. So, the next time you see a $60,000 listing and think, "That's unbelievable," remember, every deal has a story, and every story has a price. If you love uncovering the truth behind places everyone else overlooks, make sure to hit that subscribe button, because the next story might change how you see affordable forever.